Hey, it's Scott. And I want to go ahead and just quickly touch on the whole idea of giving fluids to babies and kids versus big people. Because as a rule, adults, if they're shocky, you give them a liter. They don't look better, what do you give them? Another liter. That doesn't work so well for little kids. Because if the IV bag weighs more than the baby does, that's a problem. And that's why, remember, everything in kids is something per kilo. So when we're giving fluids, we're taught that it's 20 cc's or 20 mLs per kilo. Now, why that's important is that's what the book teaches, and that's great if you can remember that off the top of your head. If you've got a sick kid and you can't remember numbers off the top of your head, other ways to remember 20 per kilo. Number 1, grab your PD wheel. Number 2, grab your Braslo tape. Number 3, open up your Hentevi app. All of the various cheat sheets will remind you that fluids for little kids are 20 cc's per kilo. The problem is if you can't find your cheat sheet, then you have to try to remember 20 cc's per kilo in kids. And the easiest way that I've come across to remember this is in a really sick kid, if you're honest. You're going to be on your knees saying, "Dear Lord, please help me find an IV somewhere in between all those fingers and all those toes." And if you happen to count up all those fingers and all of those toes, how many to come up with? Hopefully 20. So it's 20 cc's per kilo. So that's what we're taught from day one, is adults pretty much get a liter, little kids get 20 cc's per kilo. The difference is when you take a field trip over to the baby ICU. And if you've ever taken NRP, remember ACLS is for big people, PALS is for little people, and NRP is essentially ACLS for the baby ICU. And in the baby ICU NRP course, remember they teach that for babies we only give 10 cc's per kilo. And their rationale, and it makes sense if you think about it, is you don't want to give too much fluid to a little tiny baby. Just like you don't want to give too much fluid to a little tiny kid. And their second rationale is called, you can give them a little fluid, and if you want to, you can always go ahead and just give them a little more. So in the baby ICU or on transport with babies, they teach 10 cc's per kilo. And if you can remember that, wonderful. That's absolutely great. However, I asked one of our baby ICU docs, I said, what about the back of the rig or the ER where we don't take care of babies every day? I said, if you can only remember 20 per kilo, because that's what's been drilled into our heads since day one for kids, can you give 20 per kilo in the ER to a baby? She's like, absolutely. She's like, just don't be stupid. She's like, push it nice and slow. Make sure that their lungs and their liver are not filling up with too much fluid. She's like, yes, the book teaches 10 per kilo, and if you can remember it, that's wonderful. But if you give 20 per kilo to all the other kids in your ER, she said for most babies, it's absolutely fine. So if you're in the baby ICU, 10 cc's per kilo. If you've got a little kid and you can count fingers and count toes, it's 20 cc's per kilo. And big people are simple, you pretty much just give them a liter. Now, take that one step further though, and that's when it comes to blood. Remember, adults get a unit. They're still chromate, they get another unit. As an added bonus, when you're trying to give blood to babies and little kids, here's how you remember it. Blood is thicker than water. So whatever you gave for saline or ringers, that was 20 per kilo. Just simply cut it in half, and it's 10 per kilo for blood. So if you count your fingers, count your toes, that's how you remember to give fluids to a kid. And if you've got a bad trauma, just simply blood is thicker than water. So it's half that, or 10 per kilo, for blood.